Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Alien Protocols. You know, things get a little worse as we go through this research together. You guys know that we're deep into a polar flip, and this flip brings our magnetic field down to zero. Earth's protection goes down to zero and stays there for a while, and then slowly returns. And as we spoke about before, you can see right here what happened during the last pole flip. This was a mass extinction. There is this super drop that happens right here. If you can see, I'll try and point it out for you. And that's when the magnetosphere gets so low that it just flips that little extra last bit to nothing. And that's when the mini poles and the main poles make their midway push and kind of they're the closest they are. There are a lot of charges going through the central area, and it's a time when it's very intense for the magnetosphere of the Earth. And all the energy of the magnetosphere and the magnet that is Earth goes to splitting up and moving these little poles. And when your field strength gets to about, I'm thinking 75, 80, maybe 70, it does this last final drop. Boom. And I think it can go from 30% field strength to nothing in 5 years. And if you look right now at our pole strength here, just look at the line. It's this light gray line. It's the steepest drop in hundreds of thousands of years. It's incredibly steep. So there's some extra not great news about all of this. When your shield against solar flares and the radiation from space, cosmic rays, very high energy, dangerous particles, X-rays, gamma rays, everything. When you don't have a magnetosphere, all that hits Earth, and that will burn off the atmosphere and stop our greenhouse effect. Then there'll be a super rapid drop in temperature. But that also means that our shield is weaker. So a storm that wouldn't have bothered us before now becomes a Carrington event. And I just discovered, aside from the Milosevic cycle for the sun, I found a couple other things very unfortunate for us. The sun does have a field that it flips back and forth with. You can see here, it does the same thing I was explaining with the Earth, with the mini poles. And as you go through the stages of it, as it increases back in strength, as we're doing now, there are more sunspots. And sunspots are directly related to the solar flares. And we are on a mega swing up moment now in the next just couple years for solar flares. So although I did predict a lot of solar flares coming up this year and next year, here's some evidence that my gut intuition was right. Look how steep. If you look at this little gray thing on the bottom, we are rising up the gray about a third of the way up already. The sun can and will blast us soon, and it's going to be bad. We really should prepare for all this. It's ridiculous that we don't prepare. We're smart enough. We're better than this. There's also something called a Rossby wave. which are these waves that occur in a weather system when you're on a rotating body. And we're in a Rossby wave cycle now, and that means it's just going to agitate the cold weather. It's another factor, right? And we know the sun is in this twisted up cycle now with as it rotates, a lot of these poles pinch off, and the convection inside the sun of the magnetic field ties little knots and they pinch off. They become little mini circles that come to the surface and then break and send out a massive solar storm. Now we can look at the temperature here and see that Earth's temperature has changed dramatically. Every major peak and every major valley is some sort of catastrophe, some sort of mega event. And you can see we've had very stable temperature for a long time, thousands of years, enough to have civilization happen. But you can see the past is not quite so gentle. And this line down the center, right below where we are, is the glaciation line. So once you go below that, glaciation begins. You dig? Okay, so we see sunspots are coming. We know they're coming big time. Does this have anything to do with our friends that we see in the sky? They're pretty amazing. Well, folks, I think we should have our government get moving on this. There should be shelters built. There's no question this is happening. And our polls, we're definitely in that drop. You can see all the anomalies here at the end here. This is from last year. These are mini poles that have broken off. And I went through a couple videos ago how these dots relate to each other and why they're particularly bad. And several of them are areas are incredibly bad and indicative that we're deep into the pole migration. Well, I love you guys. What do you think?